The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Thornwell penthouse, 70 stories above Manhattan. From this height, Central Park looked like a dark wound in the glittering city, and Dashiell Thornwell stood at the glass watching water streak down like tears he couldn't shed. In his left hand, he held a tumbler of 18-year-old Macallan. In his right, a velvet box containing $3.2 million worth of flawless diamond. The
I'm sorry,
Thornwell ring.
I can't accept
Five
this.
generations
But
of his
why? I thought
family
this
had
is what you
proposed
wanted.
with the
I
stone,
did,
and
but
now
not
it
like
was
this.
his turn. He should have felt something: joy, anticipation, the flutter of nervous excitement his father had described on the night before he proposed to Dash's mother. Instead, Dashiell Thornwell felt nothing but the cold weight of doubt pressing against his chest like a stone. The city below pulsed with a million lives, a million stories, and somewhere in that vastness was the woman he was supposed to marry. Serafina Blackwell. Beautiful. Accomplished. The daughter of old money, even if that money had run dry. On paper, she was perfect. The society pages had already dubbed them Manhattan's power couple, and the engagement announcement would make headlines from the Wall Street Journal to Page 6. But paper burned easily, and Dash had learned in his 28 years navigating the cutthroat world of tech and real estate that what looked perfect from a distance often revealed cracks up close. He turned from the window, the scotch warming his throat, but doing nothing for the ice in his gut. The penthouse stretched around him, all white marble and clean lines, floor space that cost more per square foot than most people earned in a year. Empty, even with staff, even with parties, even with Serafina herself gliding through these rooms like she already owned them. Especially with Serafina. 8 months. They had been together 8 months. She had come into his life at the Met Gala, appearing at his elbow in a gown that probably cost more than a new car, her laugh like champagne bubbles, her hand resting on his arm with the perfect pressure of familiarity and promise. The chemistry had been instant, or so everyone said. The photographers certainly thought so, their cameras flashing as Serafina tilted her head just so her golden hair, catching the light, her smile dazzling. She knew all the right things to say about his work, asked intelligent questions about Thornwell Global's expansion into sustainable tech, mentioned charities she supported that aligned perfectly with his foundation's mission. She was by every measure society provided exactly what he should want. And yet, Dash set down the scotch and opened his laptop, the screen illuminating his face in the darkened room. His CFO had sent the report 3 hours ago, flagged urgent. He had read it twice already, but now he read it again, each line tightening the knot in his stomach. Serafina Blackwell had requested an advance of $500,000 from the wedding trust fund. The reason given was planning expenses, but the itemized breakdown made his jaw clench. Private jet to Paris for dress fittings, a suite at the Plaza Athénée for a week, shopping at Hermès, Chanel, Cartier. The numbers climbed with the casual excess of someone who had never earned a dollar in her life. That alone would not have troubled him. The Thornwell fortune could absorb such expenses without a ripple. What troubled him was the pattern. The private investigator's report sat in a locked drawer of his desk, and Dash retrieved it, now flipping through pages he had nearly memorized. Bank account in the Cayman Islands opened 2 months into their relationship. Withdrawals in cash untraceable. Credit card debt totaling $430,000 spread across cards her mother did not know about. Purchases that had nothing to do with wedding planning and everything to do with maintaining an image of wealth the Blackwell family no longer possessed. The Blackwell estate in Newport was mortgaged to the breaking point. Marguerite Blackwell, Serafina's mother, had gambling debts in Monaco and Manhattan. The family was not just old money. They were no money clinging to the appearance of aristocracy while the foundation crumbled beneath them. And Serafina had never mentioned any of it. But there was something else in the report. Something newer. His investigator had flagged unusual activity. A letter had been sent to his accounting firm 1 week ago on Thornwell Global letterhead requesting an advance of $500,000. The signature looked like his, but Dash had never written such a letter, never authorized such a payment. The accountant, following protocol, had put the request into the standard processing queue. It would be approved within 48 hours unless Dash intervened. Someone was forging his signature. Someone was trying to steal $500,000. And Dash had a sinking feeling he knew exactly who. He closed the report and pressed his palms against his eyes. Perhaps it did not matter. Perhaps this was simply how the world worked at this altitude. Marriages in their circle were strategic alliances, mergers of family names and social capital. Love was a luxury for people who could afford to marry for passion instead of position. But his parents had loved each other. He remembered it. The way his father looked at his mother across a crowded room like she was the only person who existed. The way they finished each other's sentences, argued about books over breakfast, held hands during evening walks through the city, even after 30 years of marriage. They had believed love was not a luxury. It was a necessity. And then there was Juliet. Dash's throat tightened, and he reached for the scotch again, draining it in one burning swallow. His baby sister, gone 3 years now, killed by a drunk driver 2 weeks before her 20th birthday. Juliet, who had been all light and laughter, who quoted poetry and believed in soulmates, and told Dash he was too cynical for his own good. She would have hated Serafina. The thought arrived unbidden, and Dash pushed back from the desk, pacing to the windows again. Juliet would have seen through the performance in minutes. She had possessed an uncanny ability to read people, to sense the gap between what they showed the world and what they hid in shadow. She would have taken one look at Serafina's perfect smile and said something like, "Her eyes don't match her mouth, Dash. She's acting." And she would have been right, because Serafina's eyes never smiled. Not really. They calculated, assessed, measured the room and everyone in it with the cold precision of an actuary determining risk. Dash had noticed it the night they met, that fraction of a second disconnect between her laugh and the expression in her gaze. He had dismissed it, then chalked it up to the armor everyone wore in their world, the necessary distance between public face and private self. But 8 months later, the disconnect had only grown wider. There were moments, fleeting and easy to miss, when Serafina's mask slipped. A flash of irritation when he suggested a quiet dinner instead of a gala. A tightness around her mouth when he mentioned his foundation's work with housing initiatives for low-income families. A coldness in her gaze when she thought he was not looking, like she was staring at a bank vault instead of a man. The intercom chimed, and Montgomery Ashford's voice filtered through the speaker. "Your Grace, if I may have a word." Dash almost smiled. Monty refused to call him by name when they were in the penthouse, insisting on the formality of his title, even though they had been friends since Harvard. Montgomery Ashford was technically his valet, but in reality he was the only person in Dash's life who would tell him the truth without filter or fear. "Come in, Monty." The door opened and Monty entered, carrying a silver tray with a fresh pour of scotch and a folded copy of the New York Times. He was 45, impeccably dressed, as always, his salt and pepper hair precisely trimmed. He set the tray on the desk and regarded Dash with the expression of a man watching a friend walk toward a cliff. "You look like a man marching to the gallows," Monty said, dispensing with formality now that the door was closed. Dash picked up the fresh scotch. "Marriage is a sentence of sorts, is it not? Most men would consider marriage to Serafina Blackwell a reward. She is by all accounts the catch of the season. Beautiful, accomplished, from a family nearly as old as your own. Beautiful, yes." Dash took a sip, letting the burn ground him. "But does she love me, Monty? Or does she love the Thornwell diamonds? Does she love the way my signature looks on a check?" Monty sighed, settling into the leather chair across from the desk. They had had this conversation before in various forms over the past 3 months. "Does it matter? This is the way of our world, Dash. Love is a luxury for people who work 3 jobs. Our class deals in alliances. I refuse to accept that." Dash set down the glass with enough force to make it ring. "My parents had affection. Real affection. I watched my father light up every time my mother entered a room. I will not shackle myself to someone who sees me as a line item on a balance sheet. Then break the engagement before it begins. Call it off. Weather the scandal. I need proof first." Dash walked to the window again, watching the rain. "I need to know who Serafina Blackwell really is when Dashiell Thornwell is not in the room, when she thinks no one of consequence is watching." Monty was quiet for a long moment. Then carefully he said, "You have an idea. I can see it in your eyes. It is the same look you get before you make a business decision that terrifies your board." Dash turned, and for the first time that evening, he felt something like energy course through him. "Do you remember what my grandfather used to say about knowing someone's character? To know a person's true nature, observe how they treat those who can do nothing for them." Monty's eyes widened. "Oh no, Dash, whatever you are thinking. The Blackwells are hiring." Dash moved to his desk, pulling up a website on his laptop. "I saw the posting this morning. They need additional staff for the Newport estate. Serafina's there now, spending the autumn preparing for the wedding. They require an underfootman." Monty stood crossing to the desk to see the screen. His face had gone pale. "You cannot be serious. You are the CEO of a $4.2 billion company. You cannot polish silver and carry luggage." "I can, and I will." Dash felt the first genuine smile he had experienced in weeks cross his face. I have already sent the application under the name Thomas Rivera. The reference was forged by someone who owes me several favors. I leave for Newport in 2 days. This is madness. If you are discovered, the humiliation. If I am discovered, I will pass it off as an eccentric romantic gesture. Dash's smile faded into something harder. But if I am not discovered, I will see the real Serafina. I will see how she treats the staff when she thinks no one of consequence is watching. I will hear what she says when she believes she is alone. If she is the woman she pretends to be, I will marry her with a glad heart. And if she is not, Dash's voice dropped dangerous and low, then I will know exactly how to deal with her. But Monty, there is something else. That forged letter, I need you to stall the accountant. Tell them I am reviewing the request personally. Do not approve the payment until I return. You think Serafina sent it? I think someone close to her did, and I am going to find out who. Monty studied him for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. You are playing a dangerous game. Life is a dangerous game. I have been playing it safe, following the rules society wrote for people like us. And it has left me standing in an empty penthouse holding a ring I am afraid to give to a woman I do not trust. Dash met Monty's eyes. I need the truth, Monty, whatever it costs. Very well. Monty straightened his jacket. What do you need from me? Cover. Tell anyone who asks that I have gone to California on urgent business regarding the San Francisco acquisition. Keep the board calm. Handle any calls from Serafina. And most importantly, Dash pulled a small notebook from his desk drawer filled with observations he had been collecting for weeks. Teach me how to be invisible. Monty took the notebook, flipping through pages of notes on posture, speech patterns, the small tells that separated old money from new wealth, from labor. You have been preparing for this. I have been preparing since the first time I saw her eyes not smile. They spent the next hour in the penthouse's private library, Monty drilling Dash on the subtleties of servant life. How to stand with shoulders slightly hunched, eyes down. How to speak with fewer words, simpler constructions, a slight roughness to the edges of his normally crisp diction. How to move through a room without drawing attention, to become part of the furniture seen but not noticed. The key, Monty explained, demonstrating the posture, is to make yourself smaller. You are tall, well-built, naturally commanding. You must unlearn the body language of power. No direct eye contact, no taking up space. You exist to serve, and servants do not have opinions or presence. Dash practiced feeling the strangeness of diminishing himself. His whole life had been training for the opposite, to walk into a room and own it, to project confidence and control. Now he was learning to disappear. Better, Monty said after the 20th attempt, but your hands give you away. You have never done manual labor. Those are the hands of a man who signs documents, not scrubs floors. Dash looked down at his hands, smooth and uncalloused, except for the slight roughness from his morning gym routine. I will wear gloves when possible, and if anyone asks, I was a butler in Los Angeles. More refined work. And the accent? I have been practicing. Dash shifted his voice, softening the hard consonants, adding a slight Hispanic lilt. I worked for a gentleman in Beverly Hills. He passed on last month. I preferred the country to the city, so I am willing to start lower. Monty nodded slowly. It is adequate enough to pass casual scrutiny, but Dash, if Serafina recognizes you, she will not. Dash moved to the window one final time, staring at his reflection in the dark glass. To Serafina Blackwell, I am a walking bank account. She has never truly looked at my face, only at what it represents. Without the suits, the cars, the context of wealth, I will be invisible to her, just another servant beneath her notice. The realization should have angered him, but instead it settled like cold certainty in his bones. This was the truth he needed to confirm. That the woman he was supposed to marry saw him as a thing, not a person, a means to an end. 2 days, Monty said quietly. You leave in 2 days. 72 hours. Dash turned from the window. 3 days to see the truth. If Serafina is who she claims to be, kind and compassionate and worthy of the Thornwell name, I will return, propose properly, and marry her with joy. And if she is not, Dash picked up the velvet ring box, feeling its weight. Then this ring will go to someone who actually deserves it. Someone who sees people as people, not as assets to acquire. Monty left shortly after midnight, promising to handle all the details of Dash's sudden departure. Alone again, Dash opened his laptop and pulled up Serafina's Instagram. 2.1 million followers. Her feed was a carefully curated gallery of luxury beauty aspiration. Photos from charity galas with captions about giving back. Shots of her morning routine complete with green juice and yoga poses. Inspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos. The comments gushed. "You are so beautiful. I wish I had your life. You are my inspiration." None of them knew the truth. None of them saw the credit card statements, the secret bank accounts, the desperation masked by designer clothes. They saw the performance, and they believed it. Dash clicked to her most recent post. A photo of the Blackwell estate in Newport, waves crashing against rocks in the background. The caption read, "Grateful for this quiet time before the wedding, reflecting on how blessed I am. Cannot wait to start this new chapter with my love." 200,000 likes in 3 hours. Thousands of comments. Serafina had tagged the photo with hashtags about gratitude, love, and blessed life. Dash closed the laptop. In 2 days, he would see what Serafina Blackwell was grateful for when the cameras were off, when there was no audience to perform for, when she was alone with people she considered beneath her. He spent the next day preparing. Monty helped him select clothes from a vintage store in Brooklyn, worn jeans and simple shirts that smelled faintly of mothballs. They bought a battered leather satchel from a thrift shop and filled it with the bare essentials. A change of clothes, a cheap phone with a new number. Cash, but not too much. The transformation happened in Monty's apartment in Brooklyn, far from the penthouse and its army of staff. Dash had not shaved in 3 days, and the stubble darkened his jaw, changing the line of his face. Monty helped him apply a temporary dye to his hair, lightening the black to a dark brown with subtle highlights that caught the light differently. When Dash looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. The man staring back wore worn jeans that sat differently than his tailored trousers, a t-shirt that had seen better days, sneakers instead of handmade Italian leather shoes. His hair was mussed, no longer precisely styled. The stubble made him look rougher, older somehow. "You look like you work for a living," Monty said, and there was something like grief in his voice. "Dash, you do not have to do this. We can hire another investigator, get more concrete proof. I need to see it myself." Dash turned from the mirror. "I need to look into her eyes when she does not know I am watching. That is the only way I will know for certain." Monty pulled out a wallet, cheap leather, worn at the edges. Inside was a fake ID with Dash's photo and the name Thomas Rivera. A social security card, a few crumpled bills. "Your identity. Guard it carefully." Dash took the wallet, sliding it into his back pocket. The weight of it felt foreign, wrong. He was Dashiell Thornwell. He had never hidden who he was, never needed to. His name opened doors, commanded respect, moved markets. Now he was Thomas Rivera, nobody from nowhere, arriving at the Blackwell estate to polish silver and fade into the wallpaper. "The bus leaves Port Authority at 6 a.m. Hi, Isham," Monty said. "I have purchased your ticket, 6 hours to Newport. You will arrive at noon, and I have arranged for a taxi to take you to the estate. The interview is scheduled for 1 p.m. "No car service," Dash said. "Thomas Rivera takes public transportation." Monty's face was grim. "You are really doing this." "I am really doing this." Dash picked up the satchel, testing its weight. Everything he needed for the next 3 days, packed into a bag that cost less than one of his dinners. "For the first time in my life, I am going to be invisible, and I am going to see what people do when they think no one important is looking." That night, Dash did not sleep in his penthouse. He slept on Monty's couch, the springs digging into his back, sirens wailing in the street below. This was closer to the world Thomas Rivera inhabited, and he needed to inhabit it fully if he was going to disappear. At 5 a.m., Monty woke him with coffee in a chipped mug. Nothing like the bone china Dash was accustomed to. Last chance to back out. Dash drank the coffee, bitter and strong. "I will see you in 4 days." "Be careful." Monty gripped his shoulder. "The truth you are looking for might destroy you." "Not knowing is already destroying me." The Greyhound bus to Newport was half full, the seats cramped and uncomfortable. Dash wedged himself between a woman with 3 shopping bags and a teenager with headphones leaking bass. The bus smelled of old upholstery and something faintly chemical, and the suspension groaned over every pothole. This was how most people traveled, without private jets or hired cars. Squeezed into tight spaces, breathing recycled air, counting the hours until arrival. Dash closed his eyes and listened. The woman beside him was on her phone, speaking rapidly in Spanish about her daughter's school problems. The teenager's music was aggressive, angry. Across the aisle, a man in a construction uniform was sleeping, his head against the window, exhaustion written in every line of his body. These were the overlooked people, the ones who cleaned the hotels and cooked the food and built the buildings that men like Dashiell Thornwell owned. He had spent his entire life surrounded by them, and he had never really seen them. Now he was one of them. The realization settled in his chest like a weight, heavy and uncomfortable and strangely clarifying. For the next 72 hours, he would not be the man who wrote checks and made decisions. He would be the man who received orders and said, "Yes, sir," and disappeared into the background. And Serafina would never know, because to her, Thomas Rivera was already invisible. The bus rolled into Newport just after noon, and Dash stepped off into cool autumn air that smelled of salt and dying leaves. The town was postcard beautiful, all cobblestones and colonial architecture, sailboats bobbing in the harbor. Old money wrapped in New England charm, every brick and shingle, whispering of history and privilege. He had been here before, of course. The Thornwell family had a summer house in Watch Hill just down the coast. He had attended parties at estates like the Blackwells, had walked these same streets in handmade shoes, had never once thought about the people who scrubbed those streets clean. Now he called a taxi from a payphone and gave the driver the address. The man barely looked at him, just nodded and pulled into traffic. To the driver, Thomas Rivera was unremarkable, forgettable, perfect. The Blackwell estate appeared at the end of a long driveway lined with maples turning gold and crimson. The house was Georgian revival, all white columns and symmetry perched on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. Waves crashed against rocks far below, sending up spray that caught the afternoon light. It was beautiful in the way things were beautiful when you did not have to maintain them. Dash knew from the investigator's report that the roof leaked, the foundation was cracking, and the heating system had not been updated since 1970. The Blackwells kept the facade perfect and let everything behind it decay, much like Serafina herself. The taxi dropped him at the service entrance, a side door half hidden by overgrown hedges. Dash paid with crumpled bills and hoisted his satchel. His heart was pounding and he forced himself to breathe slowly. This was it. The moment he stepped through that door, Dashiell Thornwell would cease to exist. Only Thomas Rivera would remain. He knocked. The door opened to reveal a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, eyes sharp as broken glass. She looked Dash up and down with the assessing gaze of someone who had spent 50 years managing staff. "You are the new footman." Her voice was clipped, British accent softened by decades in America. "Yes, ma'am, Thomas Rivera." Dash kept his eyes down, his shoulders hunched, making himself smaller. "I am Mrs. Pemberton, head housekeeper. You are older than I expected for someone starting as an under footman. And your hands—" She grabbed his hand, inspecting the palm. Dash held his breath. The calluses from his gym routine were not the calluses of hard labor, and if she looked too closely— "Soft," she said, frowning. "You have been in service before aunt valet to a gentleman in Los Angeles, ma'am." Dash pitched his voice with the accent he had practiced. He passed on. "I preferred the country to the city, so I am willing to start lower." Mrs. Pemberton's frown deepened, but she released his hand. "We run a tight ship here. Miss Serafina is preparing for her wedding to Mr. Dashiell Thornwell, one of the wealthiest men in America. Her mother is in a permanent state of anxiety. You will keep your head down, do as you are told, and speak only when spoken to. Is that clear?" "Yes, Mrs. Pemberton." "Good. The engagement party is in 3 days, Friday evening. We have much work to do. Come with me." Mrs. Pemberton led Dash through narrow corridors that smelled of lemon polish and old wood. The servants' quarters were a maze, deliberately confusing, designed to keep staff efficiently hidden from the family. They passed a kitchen where someone was chopping vegetables with violent precision, a laundry room where steam billowed from industrial machines, a pantry stocked with enough food for a small restaurant. This was the machinery that kept the beautiful facade running, the invisible labor that allowed people like Serafina to float through perfumed rooms and Instagram their blessed lives. "You will share quarters with the other footman," Mrs. Pemberton said, not looking back. "Breakfast at 5:30, always in the servants' hall. You do not eat family food. You do not use family bathrooms. You do not speak to Miss Serafina unless she addresses you directly. If you have questions, you ask me. Never the family. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." She stopped at a door and opened it. The room beyond was barely larger than a closet containing 2 narrow beds, a single dresser, and a window that overlooked the service courtyard. The other bed was occupied by clothes and personal items, presumably belonging to the footman Dash would be replacing. "Jackson leaves tonight," Mrs. Pemberton said. "You will have the room to yourself after that. Unpack quickly. There is work to be done before tonight's dinner. We have guests." She left her footsteps sharp on the wooden floor. Dash set his satchel on the empty bed and looked around the room that would be his home for the next 3 days. It was smaller than his walk-in closet at the penthouse. The walls were thin enough that he could hear someone talking in the next room. The mattress was hard as stone. This was where the help lived. Out of sight, out of mind, existing only to serve. Dash unpacked his few belongings, hanging the spare shirt in the narrow closet, placing his toiletries on the dresser. The face in the small mirror above the dresser was still strange to him, stubbly and rough hair mussed from the bus ride. Thomas Rivera. Nobody. A knock at the door. "You the new guy?" Dash turned. A man in his 50s stood in the doorway, gray-haired and weathered, wearing the same simple uniform Dash had been given. His eyes were kind but tired, the eyes of someone who had seen too much and said too little. "Thomas Rivera," Dash said, extending his hand. "Carlos Mendoza, gardener." Carlos shook his hand with a grip that spoke of decades of physical labor. "Welcome to paradise." The irony in his voice was thick enough to cut. "Is it that bad?" Carlos glanced down the hallway, then stepped into the room and lowered his voice. "Listen, friend, you seem like a decent guy, so I will give you advice. Keep your head down around Miss Serafina. Do not look at her directly. Do not speak unless she asks you a direct question. And whatever you do, do not make mistakes. She is demanding. She is complicated." Carlos chose his words carefully. In front of guests, she is an angel. Behind closed doors, she is someone else. You understand. Dash understood. He understood perfectly. "I appreciate the warning. We look out for each other down here." Carlos nodded toward the main house. "Up there, we are invisible. Down here, we are human. Remember that." After Carlos left, Dash changed into the uniform Mrs. Pemberton had provided. Dark trousers, white shirt, black vest. The fabric was cheap, the fit imperfect, but it transformed him. In this uniform, he was just another servant, indistinguishable from the others who kept this grand house running. He reported to the kitchen, where a chef who introduced himself only as Sebastian put him to work polishing silver. 200 pieces for tonight's dinner. Forks and knives and spoons, each one requiring individual attention, buffed until they gleamed. Dash had never polished silver in his life. His hands cramped within the first 15 minutes, and Sebastian barked corrections in French accented English. "No, no, no, you hold it wrong, like this. More pressure. You think this is shiny? It should reflect like a mirror." But as Dash worked his hands finding the rhythm, he listened. The kitchen was the heart of the servant world, and conversation flowed around him like water. He heard about Mrs. Blackwell's gambling debts, about the wine cellar being slowly emptied and sold off, about tensions in the household that mirrored the financial strain the family was trying to hide. And he heard about Serafina. "She is a piece of work, that one," Sebastian muttered, testing a sauce. "Beautiful like an angel, cruel like a demon. Last month she threw a plate at my head because the risotto was too salty. Not a complaint. Threw the plate." Dash kept polishing, keeping his face neutral. "Did you report it?" Sebastian laughed, bitter and sharp. "Report it to who? Her mother, Mrs. Blackwell, does not care what happens in the kitchen as long as the food arrives on time. The agency, they would just replace me with someone else. We do not have power here, Thomas. We have endurance." A young woman entered the kitchen, carrying an armful of linens. She was small and dark-haired, her eyes red-rimmed like she had been crying. Her left hand was wrapped in a crude bandage. "Lena," Sebastian called. "This is Thomas, the new footman. Thomas Catalina Reyes. She handles the laundry and assists Miss Serafina with dressing." Catalina glanced at Dash and managed a small smile before hurrying to the laundry room. Dash watched her go, noting the stiffness in her movements, the way she favored her right side. "What happened to her hand?" Dash asked quietly. Sebastian's face darkened. "What always happens, Miss Serafina's temper." Before Dash could respond, Mrs. Pemberton swept into the kitchen. "Thomas, you are needed upstairs. Fresh flowers for Miss Serafina's suite. Take the arrangement from the foyer and bring it up. Suite is on the third floor east wing. Knock before entering." Dash set down the silver and wiped his hands. This was it, his first real encounter with Serafina in his new identity. His pulse quickened as he followed Mrs. Pemberton's directions, climbing the servants' stairs to the third floor. The transformation from servant quarters to family space was stark. The narrow wooden stairs opened onto hallways carpeted in deep burgundy walls hung with oil paintings and gilt mirrors. This was the world Serafina inhabited, where every surface gleamed and the air smelled of expensive perfume instead of lemon cleaner. Dash found the flower arrangement in the foyer, a massive bouquet of white roses and lilies in a crystal vase. He lifted it carefully and carried it down the hallway to the east wing. Serafina's suite was at the end, double doors of dark mahogany. He knocked. No response. He knocked again. "Come in," a voice called, irritated. Dash opened the door and stepped into a room that could have been torn from a magazine spread. White furniture, gauze curtains, a view of the ocean that probably cost $10,000 a month in rental equivalent. And there standing by the window in a dressing gown was Serafina. She was beautiful. He had to give her that. Her golden hair caught the afternoon light, her skin was flawless, her figure perfectly proportioned. She looked like every photograph, every Instagram post, every carefully curated image she projected to the world. But she was not alone. Catalina was kneeling on the floor at Serafina's feet, pins in her mouth, adjusting the hem of a gown that hung on a nearby dress form. The gown was spectacular, probably worth more than Catalina earned in a year, all white silk and delicate beading. About time, Serafina said, not looking at Dash. Put the flowers on the dresser and leave. Dash moved into the room, keeping his eyes down, his movements careful. He set the vase on the antique dresser and turned to leave. Then Serafina yelped, "Ow, you clumsy little—" She pulled her foot back and kicked her heel, connecting with Catalina's shoulder hard enough to send the young woman sprawling. Dash froze his hand on the doorknob. "I am so sorry, Miss Serafina," Catalina stammered, scrambling to her knees. "The pin slipped. I did not mean— You pricked me." Serafina's voice had lost all its musical quality, turned sharp and ugly. "Do you have any idea how much this skin costs to maintain? If you ruin this dress with your incompetence, I shall have the cost deducted from your wages for the next year. Now get out of my sight before I strike you again." Catalina gathered her sewing kit with shaking hands and fled, tears streaming down her face. She brushed past Dash without seeing him, a ghost in her own life. Dash stood frozen by the door, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had seen Serafina annoyed before. He had seen her frustrated when plans changed or flights were delayed, but he had never seen this casual cruelty, this violence against someone who could not fight back. This was the real Serafina Blackwell. "Well," Serafina's voice cut through his shock. "Are you deaf? I said leave." Dash looked up, meeting her eyes for just a fraction of a second. She was looking directly at him, and in that moment he waited for recognition, for her to see past the stubble and the uniform and realize who he was. But her gaze slid past him like he was furniture, like he was nothing. "Yes, Miss Serafina," Dash said, keeping his voice low and rough. He backed out of the room and closed the door. In the hallway, he stood for a long moment, breathing hard. His hands were shaking with the effort of not reacting, of not throwing the door open and confronting her. But he could not. Not yet. This was just the first crack in the porcelain doll. He needed to see more. He needed to be absolutely certain. He found Catalina in the laundry room, crying into a pile of sheets. She looked up when Dash entered, her face red and swollen. "I am sorry," she said automatically. "I should not be—" "Does it hurt?" Dash asked, nodding to her bandaged hand. Catalina looked at the bandage like she had forgotten it was there. "It is fine. My own clumsiness." It was not. Dash's voice came out harder than he intended. "I saw what happened just now." Catalina went very still. "You must not say that. If the mistress hears you speaking of what happens behind closed doors, you will be out on the street without a reference. Or worse." "Does she do that often?" Catalina looked around to ensure they were alone, then whispered, "Miss Serafina has moods. When there are guests, when cameras are present, she is an angel. When the doors are closed and only staff can see, she is different. She hates mistakes. She says they are a sign of low breeding." The words landed like punches. Low breeding, as if the accident of birth determined worth. As if Catalina's humanity mattered less because she cleaned toilets instead of posing for photographs. "And Mr. Thornwell," Dash forced himself to ask, "the man she is marrying, does she speak of him?" Catalina's expression shifted to something like pity. "She calls him her golden ticket. She and her mother laugh about his letters, how boring they are, how sentimental. She mocks his feelings." The world tilted. Dash gripped the edge of a washing machine to steady himself. His letters. The letters he had poured his heart into writing late at night when he could not sleep, trying to build a bridge between his loneliness and her distant beauty. Letters about his hopes for a family, about the kind of partnership he wanted, about how marriage should be more than a contract. She had read them aloud and laughed. "I am sorry," Catalina said, misreading his silence. "I should not have said that." "No." Dash's voice was rough. "Thank you for telling me the truth." He left the laundry room and made his way back to the servants' quarters. His hands were still shaking, not with fear but with rage, white hot and barely controlled. He wanted to storm up those stairs and tear the mask off Serafina's face. He wanted to show her the consequences of her cruelty, but he forced himself to breathe, to wait, to observe, because this was just the beginning. That evening, Dash served at dinner. The Blackwells were hosting a small party. Just 6 guests, but the preparation was enormous. Dash wore white gloves and kept his eyes down, moving around the table to pour wine and replace plates. To the diners, he was invisible, a mechanism that delivered food and removed empty glasses. And because he was invisible, they spoke freely. Among the guests was Dominic Sterling, a man Dash knew from various social functions. Sterling was a gambler and a rake, charming in the way of men who had never faced consequences for their actions. He sat too close to Serafina, his hand resting on the back of her chair with an intimacy that made Dash's jaw clench. "Darling Sarah," Sterling said, reaching across the table to touch Serafina's hand. His fingers lingered too long, too familiar. "You are glowing. Marriage clearly agrees with you." "The engagement agrees with me," Serafina corrected with a smile. "The marriage will be even better." Marguerite Blackwell, Serafina's mother, laughed. "Once that ring is on your finger, my dear, you will have access to resources that will solve all our little problems." "Mother," Serafina said, glancing at the servants. But her eyes did not land on Dash. He was just furniture to her, incapable of understanding or remembering. The dinner conversation danced around finances, around debts that needed managing, and appearances that needed maintaining. Sterling made a crude joke about Dashiell Thornwell being too serious, too bookish, and Serafina laughed in a way she never laughed with Dash himself. After dinner, the party moved to the drawing room and Dash was dismissed. But instead of returning to his quarters, he lingered in the hallway outside the drawing room. The door was ajar, and through it he could hear everything. "Is the old bat upstairs?" Sterling asked. "Mother has a migraine," Serafina said. "We have privacy." "Good, because we need to discuss the timeline. Thornwell is in California for another week. That gives us breathing room." Dash's blood went cold. Monty was supposed to be covering for him, telling anyone who asked that he was in California. The plan was working. Serafina believed he was 3,000 miles away, too busy to notice what was happening in Newport. "The forged letter went out last week," Serafina said. Dash could hear liquid pouring, probably brandy. "Requesting an advance on the trust fund for wedding expenses. 500,000 should cover my immediate debts and give us operational capital." So it was her. She had forged his signature. She had tried to steal $500,000. "You are certain he will not question it?" Sterling asked. "Please, his accountant processes dozens of requests every week. As long as it is on company letterhead with something that looks like his signature, it goes through. And even if he does notice, I will just cry and say I was stressed about the wedding. He is pathetically eager to please." "Speaking of which," Sterling said, and Dash heard papers rustling. "I found this in your desk. The silent halls do echo with the past. Christ, Sarah, he really wrote this. About his dead sister, no less. Juliet, the angel who could do no wrong." Serafina's voice dripped with mockery. "He gave it to me with actual tears in his eyes. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing." Dash's vision tunneled. The poem. The poem he had written on the 3rd anniversary of Juliet's death, when grief had broken through his carefully maintained composure. He had shared it with Serafina in a moment of raw vulnerability, thinking he was giving her access to his heart, and she had kept it to mock him. "Read it," Sterling said. "I could use a laugh." "The silent halls do echo with the past," Serafina read in an exaggerated, dramatic voice. "Of shadows long and memories cast. But in your eyes a light I see, a harbor safe for ships at sea." Sterling roared with laughter. "Ships at sea? The man has never left America. He is a billionaire, not a sailor." "It gets worse. There are 3 more stanzas, each more pathetic than the last." Serafina paused. "But I keep it. It is useful. Whenever I need him to be particularly malleable, I mention his sister. Instant tears, instant compliance. He is so desperate to have someone understand his pain." "You are wicked," Sterling said, but there was admiration in his voice. "I am practical. Once we are married, I will have control of enough of his fortune to pay off every debt, set up our real life together, and still maintain the public facade. Dashiell can keep his penthouse and his company. I will have a townhouse in London, freedom and access to unlimited funds." "And me," Sterling added. "And you," Serafina agreed. "The husband I actually want." Dash stood in the hallway, the words washing over him like acid. Every sentence burned, every laugh branded itself into his memory. This was not just betrayal, this was desecration. They were laughing at his grief, mocking the most painful loss of his life, planning to steal from him while maintaining a lie. Something inside Dashiell Thornwell broke. Not a loud break, but a quiet one. Irreversible. The man who had come to this house hoping to find evidence that he was wrong, that his doubts were unfounded, that Serafina was redeemable. That man died in the hallway outside the drawing room. The man who remained was colder, harder, certain. He did not storm into the room. He did not confront them. Instead, he turned and walked quietly back to the servants' quarters. His hands were steady now. His mind was clear. He had come for the truth, and he had found it. Serafina Blackwell was exactly what he had feared, and worse than he had imagined. She was not just a gold digger. She was cruel, calculating, willing to weaponize his pain for her gain. And she had made a fatal mistake. She had underestimated him. She thought Dashiell Thornwell was a sentimental fool, a man whose emotions made him weak. She was about to learn how wrong she was. In his small room, Dash pulled out the cheap phone and called Monty. "It is worse than we thought," Dash said without preamble. She forged the letter requesting the trust fund advance. "She has a lover, Dominic Sterling, and she has been mocking me to her friends, using Juliet's memory as a manipulation tool." Monty was silent for a long moment. "Come home, Dash. You have what you need. End this." "Not yet." Dash looked out the small window at the main house lights, glowing in the windows like a beautiful lie. "The engagement party is Friday night, 2 days from now. She is expecting me to return from California and play the loving fiancé. I am going to give her exactly what she wants." "What are you planning?" "A reckoning." Dash's voice was ice. She wanted a wedding, a public celebration, a chance to cement her position as Mrs. Dashiell Thornwell. "I am going to give her a spectacle she will never forget." "Dash, contact Patricia Nguyen. Tell her I need the full dossier on Blackwell estate finances. Every debt, every mortgage, every piece of leverage we can find. Tell her I have been negotiating with Manhattan Trust Bank for a week now. It is time to close the deal. I want to own their mortgage by Friday afternoon. You have been planning this for a week, since before you even came here. I have been planning this since the moment I saw that forged letter in the PII report. I started the mortgage acquisition process immediately. I just needed confirmation that Serafina was everything I feared." Dash's voice hardened. "Now I have it. Tell Patricia to finalize everything, and tell her to prepare fraud charges against Sterling. The forged letter is enough to put him in prison. You are going to destroy them both. I am going to give them exactly what they deserve, which is the truth exposed for everyone to see." Dash ended the call and sat on the narrow bed, his mind already racing through the details. 2 days, 48 hours to gather every piece of evidence to build an airtight case to prepare the stage for the final act. The heartbreak was over. The rage was controlled, focused, sharpened to a blade. Serafina Blackwell wanted to play games with a billionaire. She was about to learn that Dashiell Thornwell did not lose. He just changed the rules. Dawn broke over Newport like a wound, all blood-red light spilling across the Atlantic. Dash had not slept. He had spent the night in his narrow servant's bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house settle around him. Every creak of the floorboards was a footstep. Every whisper of wind against the windows was a voice mocking his pain. But the rage that had consumed him in the hallway outside the drawing room had crystallized into something colder, purer. Rage was fire, uncontrolled and consuming. What Dash felt now was ice, precise, surgical. The kind of cold that allowed a man to dismantle another person's life piece by careful piece. At 5:30, he rose and dressed in the servant's uniform. His muscles ached from the unfamiliar labor of the previous day, from carrying trays and polishing silver and standing for hours in postures his body was not accustomed to. This was what physical work felt like. This was what people like Catalina endured every day, while people like Serafina complained about their manicures. The servants' breakfast hall was a long room in the basement, lit by fluorescent lights that hummed and flickered. A dozen people sat at wooden tables eating eggs and toast in near silence. The exhaustion was palpable, a weight that hung over the room like humidity. Dash took a plate and sat beside Carlos the gardener, who had warned him on his first day. Carlos looked at him with eyes that had seen too many new faces come and go. "You survived the night," Carlos said. "It was not quite a question." "Barely." Dash kept his voice low, matching the tone of the room. "Does it get easier?" "No. You just get better at disappearing." Carlos pushed eggs around his plate without enthusiasm. "You met Miss Serafina yesterday. I saw you carrying flowers to her suite." "I did." And Dash thought carefully about his answer. He needed allies, but he could not reveal too much. Not yet. "She is exactly what you said. An angel in front of cameras. Something else behind closed doors." Carlos nodded slowly. "You learn fast. That is good. The ones who learn slow do not last." Sebastian, the chef, slid into the seat across from them. He looked haggard with dark circles under his eyes and flour dusting his black hair. Another party Friday night, the engagement party, which means another 18-hour day in the kitchen preparing food they will barely touch. I heard, Dash said carefully. It sounds like a large event. 150 guests, society, press, the whole performance. Sebastian's accent grew thicker with bitterness. And we will smile and serve and pretend we do not see what is really happening. What is really happening? Dash asked. Sebastian and Carlos exchanged a look. Then Sebastian leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. You are new. You seem decent. So I will tell you what I told no one else. I saw you last night. Outside the drawing room. I know you heard. Dash went very still. I do not know what you mean. Please, I have worked in houses like this for 20 years. I know the difference between a servant who belongs here and someone who is playing a role. You hold yourself wrong. You speak too well when you forget to rough your words. And your hands? Sebastian grabbed Dash's wrist, turning his palm up. These are not the hands of someone who has worked manual labor their entire life. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Dash could feel Carlos watching, waiting. The kitchen staff at the other tables continued eating oblivious. This was the moment of decision. Trust or deception, alliance or isolation. Dash made his choice. You are right, he said softly. I am not who I claim to be. Then who are you? Dash glanced around the breakfast hall, ensuring no one was close enough to overhear. Then he pulled out his wallet, the cheap leather one Monty had given him. Inside, beneath Thomas Rivera's fake identification, was a single business card. Cream-colored cardstock raised lettering, simple and elegant. He handed it to Sebastian. The chef read it, his eyes widening. Dashiell Thornwell, CEO Thornwell Global. He looked up, his face pale. You are him. You are the fiancé. Carlos leaned over to look at the card, then jerked back like it had burned him. Dios mío, you are the man she is marrying. I was supposed to be. Dash took the card back and tucked it into his wallet. But I had doubts. So I decided to see who Serafina Blackwell really is when she thinks no one of consequence is watching. And now you know, Sebastian said. Now I know. Dash's voice was flat. She is cruel. She is calculating. She is planning to defraud me using forged documents. She has a lover. And she has been using the memory of my dead sister to manipulate me. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Carlos crossed himself. Sebastian sat back, processing. What are you going to do? Sebastian asked finally. That depends. I need help. I need eyes and ears in parts of this house I cannot access. I need people who are willing to tell me the facts about what happens when I am not in the room. Dash met their eyes. And I need to know that what I tell you stays between us. Why should we help you? Carlos asked. Not hostile, just careful. You are rich. You are powerful. What do you care what happens to people like us? It was a fair question. Dash thought about how to answer it, how to explain what he had learned in the past 24 hours. About invisibility, about dignity, about the casual cruelty of people who had never known what it meant to be powerless. Because yesterday I watched Serafina kick Catalina hard enough to leave a bruise, and no one said anything. Because I have heard the way she speaks about all of you when she thinks you cannot hear. Because I am learning what it means to be overlooked, and I don't like what I see people do when they think no one is watching. Dash leaned forward. I came here to find out if Serafina loved me. I found out she despises me. But I also found out she despises all of you. And that I cannot forgive. Sebastian and Carlos exchanged a long look, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Sebastian nodded. What do you need? Relief flooded through Dash, though he kept his face neutral. Everything you can tell me, every cruelty, every crime, every moment when Serafina shows who she really is. I need evidence for what is coming. What is coming? Carlos asked. The engagement party is Friday night. She is expecting me to return from California and play the adoring fiancé. Instead, I am going to give her a show she will never forget. Dash pulled out the cheap phone. But first, I need to make sure every piece of evidence is documented. Every witness is ready, and every exit is blocked. For the next hour, sitting in that basement breakfast hall with fluorescent lights humming overhead, Dash listened. Sebastian told him about the plate thrown at his head, about the constant verbal abuse, about wages withheld for imaginary infractions. Carlos described finding Catalina locked in the walk-in freezer 2 months ago, shivering and crying because she had arranged flowers in a way Serafina did not like. Other staff members drifted over as word spread quietly. A young man named Marcus, who cleaned the pool, described being called stupid and worthless when he asked about payment for overtime. An older woman named Dorothy, who managed the linens, showed him a scar on her arm from where Serafina had thrown a crystal vase. Each story added another layer to the picture. This was not just one bad day or one moment of temper. This was systematic, habitual, a pattern of cruelty enabled by power and privilege, and the knowledge that servants had no recourse. She is a monster, Dorothy said simply. We all know it. We all endure it. Because we need the boss and she knows we need the jobs. Not anymore, Dash said. He pulled out a pen and the small notebook he had been carrying. I'm going to give you my lawyer's direct number. Her name is Patricia Nguyen. After Friday night, if any of you want to press charges for assault or wage theft or any of the dozen labor law violations I have heard about this morning, she will represent you for free. You have my word. Why would you do that? Marcus asked, suspicious. What do you get out of it? Justice, Dash met his eyes. And maybe if I am lucky, I get to sleep at night, knowing I did something right. But Sebastian stood abruptly. I am in, whatever you need. That woman threw a plate at my head and I smiled and apologized because I was afraid of losing my job. I am tired of being afraid. Me too, Carlos said. My daughter is 10. I do not want her growing up in a world where people like Miss Serafina get away with treating people like garbage. One by one, the others nodded. Dorothy, Marcus, a young woman named Hannah who worked in housekeeping. They were tired. They were angry. And for the first time, someone was offering them a chance to fight back. Then here is what we do, Dash said. Today and tomorrow, you keep detailed logs. Times, dates, witnesses for everything Serafina does. If she is cruel, document it. If she breaks labor law, document it. And Friday night, when the engagement party happens, I need all of you there. Visible. Present. Because when I expose her, I want her to see the faces of every person she hurt. You are really going to destroy her, Sebastian said. It was not a question. I am going to give her exactly what she deserves, which is the facts exposed for everyone to see. The meeting broke up as staff scattered to their various duties. Dash was assigned to polish the silver again, another 200 pieces for tonight's dinner party. His hands were already raw from yesterday's work, but he welcomed the pain. It kept him focused, grounded. As he worked, Catalina drifted into the kitchen, carrying a basket of laundry. She moved carefully like someone in pain, and when she set the basket down, Dash saw fresh bruises on her arms. Catalina, he said quietly, what happened? She glanced at him, then away. I'm fine, just clumsy. You are not clumsy, and those bruises did not come from clumsiness. Dash set down the silver he had been polishing. Did Serafina do that? Catalina's eyes filled with tears. Please, you will get in trouble for asking. I will get in trouble for telling. I am already in trouble, and I am trying to help. Dash kept his voice gentle. What happened? For a long moment, Catalina said nothing. Then so quietly he almost could not hear, she whispered, This morning, I brought her breakfast tray 10 minutes late because the toaster broke. She threw the tray at me. The coffee was hot. It burned my arm. She pushed up her sleeve, revealing an angry red burn across her forearm. Dash felt rage spike through him, white hot and barely controlled. Did you treat it? Did you see a doctor? I cannot afford a doctor, and if I report it, I lose my job. Miss Serafina will say I am lying, and Mrs. Blackwell will support her, and I will be the one who suffers. Not this time. Dash pulled out his phone and took a photograph of the burn. May I? Catalina nodded, her hands shaking. This is evidence, documented proof of assault. And I promise you, Catalina, you will not be the one who suffers, not anymore. You are just a footman, she said, but there was hope in her voice. What can you do? More than you think. Dash met her eyes. Do you have dreams? Things you want to do after you leave here? Catalina's face transformed just for a moment from fear to longing. I want to open a bakery, a small one in the Bronx near where my mother lives. I want to make pan dulce like my abuela taught me. I want a place that smells like cinnamon and hope instead of fear and bleach. How much would it cost to open this bakery? She laughed, bitter and sad. More than I will ever have. Maybe $50,000 to start, for equipment, rent permits. But I will never save that much. Half my wages go to my mother's medical bills in Mexico. The other half goes to rent. I have been working here for 2 years and I have saved $600. Dash thought about the Thornwell diamond in its velvet box sitting in a vault in Manhattan. $3.2 million of compressed carbon meant to symbolize eternal love with a woman who saw him as an ATM. What if I told you that in 2 days you could have enough money to open 10 bakeries? Catalina stared at him. I would say you are crazy, or cruel to give me false hope. I am neither. I am just someone who is very tired of watching good people suffer while bad people prosper. Dash returned to polishing silver. Keep documenting what she does to you, and trust me, in 2 days everything changes. The rest of the day passed in a blur of menial labor. Dash carried firewood, polished more silver, helped set tables for the evening's dinner party. His back ached, his hands were blistered, his feet throbbed from standing on hard floors in cheap shoes. But every moment of discomfort clarified his purpose. This was what people endured. This was the world beneath the world of wealth and privilege. And Serafina Blackwell moved through it like a queen through a servants' hall, blind to the humanity of everyone around her. That evening's dinner party was smaller than the previous night's, just 6 guests. Dash served again, invisible in his white gloves and dark uniform. And again, because he was invisible, people spoke freely. Serafina held court at the head of the table, dazzling in a dress that probably cost more than Catalina earned in a year. She laughed at jokes that were not funny, touched arms with calculated intimacy, performed the role of gracious hostess with the skill of someone who had been trained since birth. But Dash saw the performance now. He saw the way her smile never reached her eyes, the way she checked her phone obsessively, probably texting Dominic Sterling, the way she dismissed servants with a wave of her hand, not even bothering to look at their faces. After dinner, as the party moved to the parlor, Dash cleared plates in the dining room. Through the doorway, he could see Serafina pouring brandy, her movements graceful and practiced. I spoke to Dashiell this morning, she was saying. He is still in California, positively drowning in meetings. The poor dear sounded exhausted. Dash had not spoken to her in 4 days. She was lying, maintaining the fiction of their relationship for her audience. Monty must have been intercepting her calls, responding to texts, keeping the illusion alive. When does he return? One of the guests asked. Tomorrow afternoon, just in time for the engagement party Friday night. Serafina's smile was brilliant. I can hardly wait. It has been torture being apart. More lies, each one delivered with a conviction of truth. Dash wondered how many times she had lied to his face, and he had been too trusting to notice. He finished clearing and retreated to the kitchen, where Sebastian was already preparing breakfast items for the next day. You are learning to hate her, Sebastian observed. I can see it in your eyes. I am learning what she really is. That is not quite the same thing. Is it not? Sebastian began chopping onions with violent precision. Hate is clarifying. It removes doubt. And you, my friend, are a man who needs clarity. What I need, Dash said, is evidence. Irrefutable, undeniable, the kind that cannot be explained away or dismissed. Then you need to see the study. Dash turned. What study? Miss Serafina has a private study on the 2nd floor. She thinks we do not know about it, but of course we do. We clean it. She keeps things there, documents, plans. I have seen file folders with your name on them. Dash's pulse quickened. Can you get me inside? I can do better than that. Tomorrow morning she has a spa appointment in town. She will be gone for 3 hours. I can ensure you are assigned to clean the 2nd floor. Sebastian smiled sharp and cold. What you find in those 3 hours is between you and your conscience. Thank you. Do not thank me. Just make her pay. The next morning dawned clear and cold, October light spilling through the narrow window of Dash's servant quarters. Today was Thursday. The engagement party was tomorrow night. Serafina expected him to arrive from California at 4 p.m., Friday freshly showered and playing the role of devoted fiancé. Instead, Dashiell Thornwell was going to pull off the greatest performance of his life. But first he needed evidence. At 8 a.m., Mrs. Pemberton assigned him to the 2nd floor. Miss Serafina is out for the morning. The rooms need dusting. You will work alone. Do not touch anything valuable. And for heaven's sake, do not break anything. Are we clear? Yes, ma'am. Dash climbed the servants' stairs with a bucket of cleaning supplies and his heart hammering against his ribs. The 2nd floor was family territory, rooms he had no business entering as Thomas Rivera. But as Dashiell Thornwell, he had every right to know what his fiancée kept hidden. Sebastian had described the study as a small room at the end of the east hallway, easily overlooked. Dash found it exactly where Sebastian said it would be, door slightly ajar. He glanced up and down the hallway, ensuring he was alone, then slipped inside. The room was small but elegant, decorated in shades of cream and gold. A Louis XVI desk sat beneath a window overlooking the gardens. File cabinets lined one wall. A laptop sat closed on the desk, probably password protected. Dash did not need the laptop. He needed the files. He opened the first cabinet and began searching. The folders were meticulously organized, labeled in Serafina's precise handwriting. Wedding vendors, guest lists, dress fittings, and then in the back of the second drawer, Project Thornwell. Dash pulled out the folder with hands that had begun to shake. Inside was a dossier that made his blood run cold. Someone, probably a private investigator Serafina had hired, had compiled everything about him. His daily routines, his business associates, his philanthropic interests, psychological profiles based on interviews with people who knew him. There were notes in the margins, strategies written in Serafina's handwriting. Use his dead sister as emotional leverage. Mention Juliet when he resists financial requests. Responds to intellectual flattery. Quote poets, he admires Keats, Byron, Wordsworth. Dislikes public conflict. Will concede in arguments to avoid scenes. She had studied him like a general studies an enemy. Every weakness mapped. Every vulnerability cataloged. Every pressure point identified. And there, paper-clipped to the last page, was a photocopy of the poem he had written about Juliet. The poem he had given Serafina in a moment of raw grief, thinking he was sharing his soul. Someone had highlighted sections in yellow. Next to his description of Juliet's laugh, Serafina had written, "Too sentimental, used to trigger tears." Dash closed the folder carefully, fighting the nausea rising in his throat. This was not just betrayal. This was psychological warfare. Serafina had turned his love into a weapon and his grief into a tool. He took photographs of every page with his phone, documenting the evidence. Then he kept searching. In the third drawer, he found financial documents, credit card statements showing the $430,000 in debt, bank records for the Cayman Islands account. And there, in a folder labeled wedding financing, a draft of the forged letter requesting an advance from the trust fund. The letter was on Thornwell Global letterhead, probably stolen from his office during one of Serafina's visits. The signature was a crude forgery of his own, but close enough to pass a casual inspection. It requested $500,000 for wedding-related expenses and family obligations. Language vague enough to avoid questions, but specific enough to trigger payment. Attached to the letter was an email thread between Serafina and Dominic Sterling. Dash read it with growing horror. From Serafina Blackwell to Dominic Sterling. Date October 10th. Subject timeline D. The letter went out last week. DT's accountant received it Monday. Monty, his valet, intercepted and is stalling, claiming DT wants to review personally. Expected approval by end of week. Once the money clears, I can pay off the Monaco debt and cover mother's mortgage payment. The rest goes into our operational account. After the wedding, we will have full access to the trust. Conservative estimate, $2 million per year in allowance, plus access to real estate portfolio. You were right. This is the easiest money we will ever make. S. From Dominic Sterling. To Serafina Blackwell, date October 10th. Subject read timeline. And the prenup. From Serafina Blackwell to Dominic Sterling, date October 10th. Subject read timeline. His lawyer pushed for an infidelity clause. I am refusing to sign anything that includes it. Told DT it is unromantic and shows lack of trust. He actually apologized for suggesting it. God, the man is an idiot. Dash read the words 3 times, each reading hitting harder than the last. Idiot. She thought he was an idiot. A pathetic, sentimental fool who could be manipulated with tears and poetry. She was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. He photographed everything. The emails, the forged letter, the bank statements, the strategic notes about using Juliet's death. When he was finished, he had enough evidence to send both Serafina and Dominic to prison for fraud. But prison was not enough. Prison was impersonal, legal, distant. Dash wanted Serafina to feel what he had felt. The moment of devastating realization when the person you trusted revealed themselves to be a stranger. The humiliation of being exposed in front of everyone who mattered. The complete destruction of the life you thought you were building. He wanted her to know exactly how it felt to be invisible and powerless. Dash closed the file cabinets and left the study exactly as he had found it. Downstairs, he found Sebastian in the kitchen. "Did you find what you needed?" the chef asked quietly. "More than I needed, enough to bury her." Dash pulled out his phone and called Monty. "How is California?" Monty asked, voice dry. "Educational. Listen, I need you to execute on a few things today. First, contact Patricia Nguyen. Tell her to finalize the mortgage acquisition we started last week. I want it completed and in my name by 5 p.m. today. $4.7 million. Whatever they owe, I want it. The bank has been ready for days. They are eager to offload the debt. I will have Patricia close by end of business today." "Good. Second, I need you to bring the Thornwell diamond to Newport. Rent a car, drive it yourself. Be here by 3 p.m. tomorrow. Third, contact the district attorney's office. Tell them I am prepared to file fraud charges against Dominic Sterling and provide evidence of forgery and conspiracy. Have them ready to move tomorrow night. Tomorrow night at the engagement party. The engagement party is the perfect venue. Everyone who matters will be there. Everyone who helped enable this, who looked the other way, who benefited from the Blackwell lies. They are all going to watch it burn. Monty was quiet for a long moment. You are certain about that. Once you pull this trigger, there is no going back. I am certain. She mocked my sister's memory for strategic advantage, Monty. She turned my grief into a manipulation tactic. There is no going back from that. Then I will see you tomorrow at 3. Dash ended the call and returned to his cleaning duties. For the rest of the morning, he polished and dusted and made himself invisible. At lunch, he ate in the servants' hall with Catalina, Carlos, and Sebastian. Tomorrow night, he told them quietly, be ready. When it happens, I need you visible. I need her to see you, to understand that the people she treated as furniture are human beings who remember everything. What exactly is going to happen? Carlos asked. Justice? Dash met each of their eyes in turn. For every plate thrown, every burn, every moment you were invisible and powerless. Tomorrow night, Serafina Blackwell learns that actions have consequences. At 2 p.m., Dash retreated to his quarters. He had one more day to endure as Thomas Rivera. One more day of bowing and scraping and calling a Serafina, my lady, while she treated him like furniture. But every bow would be a countdown. Every yes, my lady, would be a promise of retribution. He spent the afternoon helping prepare for tomorrow's party. The ballroom was being transformed, flowers arriving by the truckload, tables being set with crystal and silver. The Blackwells were sparing no expense, determined to make this engagement party the social event of the season. They had no idea they were building a stage for their own destruction. That evening, Dash was serving dinner again when he overheard something that made his blood run cold. Serafina was on her phone in the hallway outside the dining room, and Dash was carrying a tray of dirty dishes past her. She did not see him, did not register his presence at all. Dominic, I am telling you it is fine, as she was saying. Monty called this morning. The accountant processed the payment. 500,000 should hit our account by Monday. We are golden. So Monty had not actually stalled the payment. He had told Serafina it was stalled to buy time, but the accountant must have processed it according to standard protocol, which meant the fraud was complete. The crime had been committed, which made tomorrow night even more devastating. Dash returned to the kitchen and immediately called Monty. The accountant processed the payment, Dash said without preamble. Did you know? Yes, Patricia caught it 2 days ago. We could have stopped it, but we decided to let it go through. It makes the fraud charge airtight. They actually stole the money, Dash. There is no defense. Good. Make sure the DA has all the documentation. I want Sterling arrested tomorrow night, at the party, in front of everyone. Consider it done. Dash ended the call and allowed himself a small smile. Everything was falling into place. The mortgage acquisition was finalizing. The fraud was documented and prosecuted. The evidence was overwhelming. Tomorrow night, Serafina Blackwell would learn that stealing from Dashiell Thornwell was the biggest mistake of her life. He returned to his quarters and tried to sleep, but his mind was racing. In less than 24 hours, he would transform from Thomas Rivera back into Dashiell Thornwell. He would walk into that ballroom and watch Serafina's face as she realized the servant she had ignored was the man she had tried to rob. It would be beautiful, terrible, just... Finally, near midnight, Dash drifted into fitful sleep. He dreamed of Juliet, of her laugh and her light. In the dream, she was standing in the Blackwell ballroom, watching the engagement party with sad eyes. You are doing the right thing, she said, but Dash, do not let her turn you into someone cruel. Expose her, stop her, but do not become her. He woke with tears on his face, Juliet's words echoing in his mind. She was right. Revenge was easy. Justice was harder. Justice required him to expose Serafina's cruelty without becoming cruel himself. To use his power responsibly even when every instinct screamed for destruction. Tomorrow night, he would walk a razor's edge between justice and vengeance. And he had to get it right, because Juliet would be watching. Friday arrived with cruel perfection. The sky was cloudless, the October air crisp and clean, the Atlantic glittering like hammered silver beneath the morning sun. It was the kind of day that belonged in wedding photographs and champagne toasts in the beginning of a beautiful future. Instead, it would be the day Serafina Blackwell's carefully constructed world collapsed. Dash woke early in his servants' quarters, his body aching from 3 days of manual labor, but his mind sharp as broken glass. Today was the day. In 12 hours, he would stand in that ballroom as Dashiell Thornwell and watch the woman who had tried to rob him realize exactly who Thomas Rivera had been. The morning passed in a frenzy of preparation. The engagement party was set for 8 p.m., and Mrs. Pemberton drove the staff like a general marshaling troops for battle. Flowers had to be arranged. Silver had to be polished to mirror brightness. The ballroom floor had to be waxed until it gleamed. Every detail had to be perfect. Because Serafina Blackwell demanded perfection. She prowled through the house like a restless cat, snapping at anyone who moved too slowly, who placed a flower arrangement an inch off-center, who dared to exist in her line of sight without purpose. Dash watched her performance from his position of invisibility. She was nervous, he realized, anxious. Not because she loved him and wanted the night to be perfect, but because this party was her coronation. Her public claim to the Thornwell fortune, her moment of triumph. She had no idea it would be her execution instead. Around noon, Dash was carrying boxes to the ballroom when he encountered Catalina in the hallway. She was crying quietly, trying to hide her tears, but Dash saw them. "What happened?" he asked, setting down his boxes. "I am fine." "Catalina." She looked at him, and the despair in her eyes made his chest ache. Miss Serafina found a wrinkle in the tablecloth. A tiny wrinkle barely visible. "She said I was incompetent, that I was trying to ruin her special night." Catalina's voice broke. "She said after the engagement, after she becomes Mrs. Thornwell, she is going to have me fired, that she will make sure I never work in a good house again." Dash felt the last of his hesitation evaporate. He had been doing this for justice, for truth, for principle. But seeing Catalina's tears, seeing the casual cruelty that Serafina inflicted without thought or consequence, made it personal. "Catalina, listen to me very carefully," Dash said. "Tonight, everything changes. Serafina will not be firing anyone. She will not be Mrs. Thornwell, and you." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph he had taken yesterday. "You are going to be free." The photograph showed the Thornwell diamond in his velvet box glittering under museum lights. "I do not understand," Catalina whispered. "You will. Tonight. Just trust me. And when things happen, when it all comes apart, I need you in that ballroom. I need Serafina to see you. Can you do that?" Yes, I can do that." "Good. Now dry your tears. You are not incompetent. You are not less than anyone in this house. And by tomorrow morning, you will never have to bow to anyone again." At 3 p.m., a black car pulled up to the service entrance. Dash watched from his window as Monty stepped out carrying a briefcase and a garment bag. Dash slipped down the back stairs and met him in the garden away from the main house. "You look like hell," Monty said by way of greeting. "I feel like clarity." Dash took the briefcase. "Everything in order. The mortgage paperwork is complete. As of 2 p.m., you own Blackwell Estate and everything in it. $4.7 million. Patricia negotiated a very favorable price given their default status." Monty pulled out a legal document. "This makes it official. The house, the land, the furnishings, all yours." Dash took the document, feeling its weight. 3 days ago, this had been Serafina's ancestral home. Now it was his. Leverage, power, justice. "The DA's office?" Dash asked. "2 detectives will be waiting outside the ballroom. They have a warrant for Dominic Sterling's arrest pending your signal. Fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery. The evidence you provided is airtight." Monty handed him the garment bag. "Your tuxedo, fresh from the cleaners. You are really going to do this, walk into that party as yourself." "I am going to give Serafina Blackwell exactly what she asked for. A fiancé, a public celebration, a night she will never forget." Dash smiled, and it was not a kind expression. "She just will not like how the story ends." Monty pulled out the small velvet box. "The Thornwell diamond. Are you certain you want to give this away?" Dash opened the box. The diamond caught the afternoon light, throwing rainbows across his palm. $3.2 million. 5 generations of family history, meant to symbolize eternal love. I am certain. This ring was meant for someone who sees me as a person, not a bank account. Catalina has never seen me as anything but human. That is worth more than all the diamonds in the world." Monty studied him for a long moment. "You have changed these 3 days. You are harder, colder." "I am clearer. There is a difference." Dash closed the box and pocketed it. "I came here hoping I was wrong, hoping Serafina was who she pretended to be, but I was not wrong, and now I know exactly what I need to do." "And what is that?" "Show her that people are not tools, that cruelty has a price, that the invisible are watching." Dash checked his watch. "I have 5 hours until the party." I need to transform back into myself. Can you handle the staff? Make sure Catalina, Sebastian, Carlos, and the others know to be in the ballroom when it happens. I will take care of it, Dash. Monty hesitated. Be careful tonight. This is more than exposing fraud. You are dismantling someone's entire life in front of witnesses. That kind of power, it changes you. I know, but Juliet would want me to do this, not for revenge, for all the people Serafina has hurt. For all the future victims she will never get the chance to harm. Dash picked up the garment bag. I will see you at 8. Dash spent the next 2 hours in his servants' quarters transforming. He shaved carefully, washing away 3 days of stubble. He used the dye remover Monty had provided, restoring his hair to its natural black. He showered in the cramped staff bathroom, washing away the smell of labor and lemon cleaner. Then he dressed. The tuxedo fit perfectly, custom tailored to his frame. The shirt was crisp white. The bow tie was silk. The cufflinks were platinum engraved with the Thornwell crest. When he looked in the mirror, Thomas Rivera was gone completely. Dashiell Thornwell stared back every inch, the billionaire CEO. His hair was perfectly styled. His posture was commanding. His eyes were cold and focused. He looked like power, like money, like someone you did not cross. He looked like himself. At 7:30, guests began arriving. Dash watched from his window as luxury cars pulled up the circular driveway, disgorging women in gowns and men in tuxedos. The beautiful people, the wealthy and connected, all of them here to celebrate a lie. At 7:55, Dash left his quarters and walked through the house one final time as Thomas Rivera. He found Catalina in the kitchen wearing her serving uniform, preparing to carry champagne into the ballroom. Catalina, he said softly. She turned and her eyes went wide. Thomas, no, you are him. You are Dashiell Thornwell. I am, and I need you to do something for me tonight. When the moment comes when everything happens, I need you to be present, to be visible, to let Serafina see you. Can you do that? I do not understand. You will, just trust me. Tonight everything changes. Dash walked away before she could respond, making his way to the main entrance. He stood outside the ballroom, listening to the sounds inside. Music, laughter, the clink of glasses. 200 people, all of them there to witness his engagement to Serafina Blackwell. They were about to witness something very different. Dash straightened his bow tie, checked his phone one last time to ensure all the evidence was uploaded to the cloud accessible to his lawyer and the DA's office. Then he nodded to the butler standing by the doors. Announce me. The butler's eyes widened as he recognized Dash, but training took over. He opened the doors and struck his staff against the marble floor 3 times. The sound echoed through the ballroom like gunshots. The music stopped. Conversation died. 200 faces turned toward the entrance. Mr. Dashiell Thornwell, the butler announced, his voice ringing through the sudden silence. Dash stepped into the ballroom. The transformation was total. Gone was Thomas Rivera, the invisible servant. In his place stood Dashiell Thornwell, 6 feet 2 inches of controlled power. Every movement deliberate, every gesture commanding. His tuxedo was custom-tailored perfection. His presence filled the room, demanded attention, drew every eye. He could see the exact moment Serafina recognized him. She was standing by the fireplace in a white gown that probably cost more than a car, surrounded by admirers. Her face went pale, her mouth opened slightly. Her eyes darted to his, then away, then back, as if she could not quite process what she was seeing. Because there was something wrong. Something in the way he walked, in the set of his shoulders, in the cold fury barely contained behind his eyes. She knew, on some instinctual level, she knew something terrible was about to happen. Dash crossed the ballroom floor with measured steps. The crowd parted like the Red Sea guests, murmuring, confused by the tension suddenly crackling through the air. He could see Dominic Sterling near the bar, his face draining of color as a recognition and fear warred in his expression. Dash stopped 10 feet from Serafina, close enough to speak to her, far enough that everyone in the room could see and hear what came next. Good evening, Serafina, he said. His voice was calm, controlled, deadly. I apologize for being late. I was observing. Dashiell, her voice shook slightly. I did not expect you so soon. I thought you were arriving at 8. Plans changed. I found I had pressing business here. Business that could not wait. He pulled out his phone. I wanted to share something with our guests, a video I took yesterday morning. A video? Serafina's eyes darted around the room, seeking escape, finding none. Yes, a video of you and Mr. Sterling in the wine cellar. Yesterday, around 11 a.m. Dash pressed play. On the phone's small screen, clearly visible to the guests closest to him, Serafina and Dominic Sterling kissed with the passion of longtime lovers. His hands were in her hair, her arms were around his neck. There was nothing innocent about it, nothing that could be explained away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone near the back said, "Oh my God." Serafina's face went from pale to gray. Dashiell, that is not, I can explain. I am sure you can. You are excellent at explanations, at performances, at lying. Dash pocketed the phone. But before you explain, let me introduce myself properly. You see, for the past 3 days, I have not been in California. I have been here, in this house, watching you. The confusion in the room was palpable. Serafina shook her head. That is impossible. I was here, Dash repeated, his voice cutting through her protests. Working as a footman under the name Thomas Rivera. I polished your silver. I carried your firewood. I stood in the corner of the dining room and listened to you mock me with your lover. I was invisible to you, Serafina, just another servant beneath your notice. Understanding crashed through the room like a wave. He could see it on faces. The shock, the scandalized delight, the dawning realization of what he was saying. Serafina's legs buckled slightly. Someone near her gasped, "He was here the entire time." The entire time, Dash confirmed. And what I saw was educational. I saw how you treat people you consider beneath you, how you kick them, burn them with hot coffee, throw plates at their heads, how you mock the grief of a man whose sister died using her memory as a manipulation tool. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. The poem. His poem about Juliet, photocopied from Serafina's files covered in her strategic notes. This is a poem I wrote 3 years ago on the anniversary of my sister Juliet's death. She was 19, killed by a drunk driver. I gave this to you, Serafina, thinking I was sharing my soul, thinking you would understand my pain. He unfolded it, showing the room Serafina's highlighted notes. Used to trigger tears, he read aloud. Too sentimental. A woman near the front started crying. A man muttered, Jesus Christ. Serafina reached for him. Please, Dashiell. I was confused. I was scared. I did not mean. You meant every word. Dash's voice was ice. I have the emails, Serafina, the ones between you and Sterling, planning how to defraud me, how to forge my signature on a letter requesting $500,000 from my trust fund. A letter you sent. Money that was transferred to your account this week. Diane, he pulled out printouts of the emails, holding them up for the room to see. The evidence was damning. Conspiracy laid bare in black and white. Marguerite Blackwell, who had been watching from the edge of the room, made a sound like a wounded animal and collapsed into a chair. Serafina stared at the emails. You have no right. I have every right. I am the victim of your fraud. And speaking of rights, Dash pulled out another document. Official, notarized, stamped. As of 2 p.m. So today I am the legal owner of Blackwell Estate, all $4.7 million of mortgage debt that your family defaulted on. This house, the land, the furnishings, everything. The room exploded in murmurs. Cameras flashed. Phones appeared recording everything. Serafina stared at the document like it was a snake. You bought my house. I bought your debt, which means I own everything it secures. The roof over your head, the floors you walk on, the walls around you. Dash folded the paper calmly. And now I am going to make you an offer, Serafina. You have 30 days to vacate. After that, this estate will be converted into a training center for hospitality workers. A place where people like Catalina can learn their trade without being abused, where they will be treated with dignity and respect. He turned to the crowd, finding Catalina standing frozen near the kitchen entrance, tears streaming down her face. Catalina Reyes, Dash said, his voice carrying across the ballroom, would you please come here? She hesitated, terrified, but Sebastian gave her a gentle push. She walked across the ballroom floor, the crowd parting for her until she stood beside Dash. This woman, Dash said to the assembled guests, has worked for the Blackwell family for 2 years. In that time, she has been kicked, burned with hot coffee, verbally abused, and had her wages illegally withheld. She has endured because she had no choice, because she needs the money to care for her mother who is dying of cancer in Mexico, because people like her are invisible to people like you. He pulled out the velvet box, opened it. The Thornwell diamond caught the chandelier light, throwing rainbows across the stunned crowd. This ring was meant for Serafina. 5 generations of my family have used it to propose. It is worth $3.2 million. He placed it in Catalina's shaking hands. It is yours now. Sell it. Open your bakery. Live your dream. You showed me more kindness in 3 days than Serafina showed me in 8 months. Catalina stared at the ring, then at Dash, then burst into tears. I cannot. You can. You deserve it. You deserve dignity, respect, a chance to build something beautiful. Dash turned back to Serafina. Unlike some people in this room, Serafina had fallen to her knees, mascara running down her face. Dash, please. I am sorry. I was wrong. I can change. You had 8 months to change. You chose cruelty instead. Dash looked down at her without pity. There will be no wedding, no merger of families, no access to my fortune. You wanted to be a Thornwell, but you never understood what that name means. It is not about money, Serafina. It is about character. And you have none. He gestured to the police detectives who had entered through the side door. Gentlemen, Mr. Sterling is yours. Dominic Sterling tried to run, but the detectives were faster. They cuffed him in front of 200 witnesses as Dash read the charges. Dominic Sterling, you are under arrest for fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud and forgery. You stole $500,000 using a forged letter bearing my signature. The evidence is irrefutable. Sterling screamed at Serafina as the detectives dragged him toward the exit. This was your idea. You said he would never find out. Shut up, Dominic, Serafina shrieked back. Shut up. Dash turned to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. Serafina, the position of housemaid is open at the new training center. If you need work, Mrs. Pemberton can help you apply. Starting wage is $15 an hour. Perhaps you will learn what it feels like to earn an honest living. The ballroom erupted, voices shouting, people crying, cameras flashing, Serafina sobbing on the floor surrounded by horrified guests. The Blackwell Empire was burning and everyone was watching. Dash walked through the chaos, his head high, his purpose complete. He found Monty waiting by the door. Well, Monty said quietly, that was dramatic. It was necessary. Dash looked back at the chaos he had created. Serafina was still on the floor, surrounded by former friends, who now looked at her with disgust and pity. Catalina was clutching the ring like a lifeline, Sebastian and Carlos supporting her as she cried. The Blackwell Empire was in ruins. How do you feel? Empty, satisfied, serene? Dash straightened his bow tie. And finally free. They walked out into the cool October night, leaving the wreckage behind. The night air hit Dash like a baptism, cold and clean after the suffocating heat of the ballroom. Behind him, the sounds of chaos continued to filter through the open doors. Shouting, crying. The sharp crack of breaking glass as someone, probably Marguerite Blackwell, hurled something against a wall. Monty walked beside him in silence as they crossed the manicured lawn toward the waiting car. The moon hung low over the Atlantic, casting silver light across the waves that crashed against the rocks below. The press will have this story in 30 minutes, Monty said as they reached the car. Patricia is already fielding calls. CNN, the Times, the Post. Everyone wants a statement. Tell them I will release one tomorrow. Tonight I just want to go home. They drove in silence through the dark Newport streets, past the colonial houses and boutique shops onto the highway that would take them back to Manhattan. Dash watched the darkness slide past, feeling like he was traveling through more than just geography. He had come to Newport as a man drowning in doubt. He was leaving as someone who had looked his fears in the face and found them justified. Someone who had seen the worst of human nature and chosen to fight it instead of looking away. His phone buzzed constantly. The board, his publicist, 3 different lawyers. He ignored them all except one, a text from an unknown number. Unknown. Mr. Thornwell, this is Catalina Reyes. I do not know if I should be calling you, but I need to say thank you, not just for the ring, but for seeing me. For the first time in my life, someone with power used it to help instead of hurt. I will never forget what you did tonight. Dash stared at the message, feeling the hollow place in his chest fill slightly. Dash, you do not need to thank me, Catalina. You deserve justice. Build your bakery, make it beautiful, and name a pastry after me. Catalina, I will name the whole bakery after you. Dash, please do not. The Dashel sounds like a law firm, but I expect an invitation to the grand opening. Catalina, you will have a permanent table, reserved, forever. Dash allowed himself a small smile. This was why he had done it. Not for revenge, for people like Catalina who deserved a chance and never got one. For the overlooked and the dismissed and the invisible. They reached Manhattan just before midnight. The city glowed against the night sky, a million windows like stars. Dash had Monty drop him at the penthouse, then stood in the lobby for a long moment looking up at the building that was his home. It felt different now, less like a cage, less like an empty monument to wealth he had not earned, more like just a place, a starting point for whatever came next. The penthouse elevator opened directly into his apartment. Dash stepped inside and immediately shrugged off his tuxedo jacket, loosening his bow tie. The space looked exactly as he had left it 3 days ago. White marble, clean lines, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the park. But he was not the same man who had left it. He poured himself a scotch and stood at the windows watching the city. Somewhere out there, Catalina was probably still crying, still processing what had happened. Sebastian and Carlos were probably celebrating. The staff at Blackwell Estate were probably in shock, trying to understand how their world had changed in the span of 2 hours. And Serafina Blackwell was probably in police custody, or at least being questioned about her role in the fraud conspiracy. Her life as she knew it was over. Her reputation was destroyed. Her future was uncertain. Dash waited to feel satisfaction, triumph, the rush of victory. Instead, he just felt tired. His phone rang. Patricia Nguyen, his lawyer. I assume you have seen the news, Patricia said without preamble. I made the news. What are they saying? Everything. CNN is calling it the undercover billionaire. The post went with from riches to rags, how a CEO exposed his gold-digging fiancée. Twitter is losing its mind. You are trending worldwide. Wonderful. The DA's office is very happy with the evidence you provided. Sterling will be arraigned Monday morning. Serafina is being questioned, but has not been charged yet. They are trying to determine her exact role in the forgery versus just benefiting from it. She planned it. I have the emails. Then she will be charged as well. Conspiracy, fraud, possibly assault, depending on whether the staff members decide to press charges. Patricia paused. Dash, you destroyed them? Completely. Is that what you wanted? I wanted the truth exposed. I wanted justice for people who had no power to seek it themselves. If that resulted in destruction, Dash took a sip of scotch. Then they destroyed themselves. I just held up a mirror. The board is concerned about your mental state. Thompson called me 6 times asking if you had a breakdown. He wants an emergency meeting Monday morning. Tell Thompson I am fine. Tell him I just saved the company $500,000 in fraud losses and prevented a marriage that would have cost millions in eventual divorce settlements. This was sound business. I will tell him, but Dash, be prepared for fallout. The public is split. Some people think you are a hero. Some think you are a controlling billionaire who violated privacy laws. It is going to get ugly. I can handle ugly. I just spent 3 days scrubbing floors and being invisible. Public opinion does not scare me. After he hung up, Dash showered and changed into comfortable clothes. He should have been exhausted, but his mind was too active for sleep. He found himself in his study pulling out the notebook he had carried to Newport. Inside were his observations from those 3 days. The cruelty he had witnessed, the kindness he had received, the small moments that had changed him. At the back was the poem he had started writing on his last night as Thomas Rivera. He read the opening lines in servant's clothes. I learned to see the world that wealth had hid from me. The invisible made visible at last, the future freed from privileges past. He added new stanzas. And in the seeing found my way, from night of doubt to honest day, not in the having but the giving, not in the taking but the living. For wealth is not what hands can hold, but hearts that see beyond the gold, the stranger's face. The helper's name, the truth that we are all the same. He dated it and closed the notebook. Someday when he had children, he would tell them this story, about the time their father became invisible to learn what really mattered. For now, he put the notebook away and tried to sleep. The Ashford Training Center for Hospitality Excellence opened on a bright April morning, 6 months to the day after the engagement party that had destroyed the Blackwell family and made Dashiell Thornwell either a hero or a villain, depending on who you asked. Dash stood in the renovated ballroom, the same ballroom where he had exposed Serafina, and looked around at what it had become. The crystal chandeliers still hung from the ceiling, but now they illuminated rows of professional workstations, teaching kitchens, mock hotel rooms for training, computer labs for learning management software. The Blackwell estate had been gutted and rebuilt into something better, something useful. 200 people filled the space for the grand opening, former staff members from various households, students enrolled in the first cohort, local politicians eager to associate themselves with the project, and journalists, always journalists, covering the transformation of Newport's most infamous property. Catalina sat in the front row with her mother, both of them crying happy tears. She had opened her bakery 3 months ago, Lena's Panaderia in the Bronx, and it was already a neighborhood institution. She had used a portion of the ring money to fund the bakery and put the rest in trust for her mother's medical care and her own future. Sebastian stood near the teaching kitchen, having been hired as the head culinary instructor. He would train the next generation of chefs, and unlike his own training, his students would be treated with dignity. Carlos was there with his daughter, who had received a full scholarship to Cornell, funded by the Thornwell Foundation. The foundation Dash had established in the wake of the scandal dedicated to supporting workers in the service industry. Dash walked to the podium, his throat tight with emotion. The past 6 months had been brutal in some ways. The public scrutiny, the board battles, the endless legal proceedings as Serafina and Sterling fought the charges against them. But they had also been clarifying. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "This building has a complicated history. It was a place of beauty and privilege. It was also a place where people were hurt, where cruelty was normalized, where the invisible labor that keeps our world running was met with abuse instead of gratitude." He paused, looking around the room. "6 months ago, I stood in this ballroom and exposed that cruelty. Today, I am standing here to announce something better. The Ashford Training Center exists for one purpose: to ensure that no one in the hospitality industry is ever treated as less than human because of their job title." Applause rippled through the crowd. "We will train workers in every aspect of hospitality: culinary arts, hotel management, event planning. But we will also train employers, because dignity flows both ways. Because respect is not something you earn by being wealthy. It is something you owe every human being you encounter." More applause. Louder now. "To Catalina, Sebastian, Carlos, and every person who survived this place when it was something uglier. This is your victory. You are not invisible. You never were. We just needed better eyes to see you." The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. After the ceremony, Dash found himself walking through the training center with various officials and donors. But his mind kept drifting to a conversation he had had last week. He had visited Serafina in the county jail where she was awaiting trial. She had lost weight, her hair was dull, her eyes were hollow. She looked nothing like the woman who had graced magazine covers and collected Instagram followers. "Why did you come?" she had asked, sitting across from him in the visiting room. "Because I wanted to see if you had changed, if you understood what you did wrong. I understand that I got caught, that you were smarter than I gave you credit for. That is not the same as understanding." Serafina had looked at him with something like curiosity. "You could have just broken up with me, called off the engagement quietly. Why destroy me publicly? Because you were not just hurting me. You were hurting everyone around you who had no power to stop you. Catalina, Sebastian, Carlos, how many others? If I had walked away quietly, you would have found another mark, another victim. I exposed you to stop you. You wanted revenge. I wanted justice. There is a difference." Dash had stood to leave. "I hope prison teaches you something. I hope you learn that people are not tools, that cruelty has consequences, that the invisible matter. And if I do not learn that, then you will spend the rest of your life alone wondering why no one wants to be near you." He had walked out without looking back. Now, 6 months later, Dash wondered if she had learned anything. He doubted it. Some people were incapable of change, incapable of empathy. But that was not his problem anymore. After the grand opening, Dash drove back to Manhattan. He had dinner plans, important dinner plans. Lena's Panaderia in the Bronx was busy as always. Dash parked on the street and walked in the smell of cinnamon and butter, immediately making him smile. Catalina was behind the counter laughing with a customer. When she saw Dash, her face lit up. "Dash, your usual table is ready. Actually, I am meeting someone. Is Dr. Cross here yet?" "In the back. I will bring you coffee." Dash made his way to the small table in the corner where a woman in scrubs was reading a medical journal. She looked up when he approached, and Dash felt the now familiar warmth in his chest when their eyes met. Dr. Vivian Cross, ER doctor at the hospital 2 blocks over. Sharp, funny, kind, completely unimpressed by his wealth. They had met 4 months ago right here in this bakery. Catalina had introduced them, and Dash had been immediately struck by how Vivian looked at him. Not as Dashiell Thornwell, billionaire, just as Dash, a man drinking coffee in a neighborhood bakery. "Sorry I am late," Dash said, sliding into the seat across from her. "The grand opening ran long." "I saw the news coverage. It looked beautiful. You must be proud." "I am, and exhausted. and ready to think about something other than work. He smiled. How was your shift? 14 hours. 2 heart attacks, 1 car accident, and a kid who stuck a toy up his nose. Standard Friday. Vivian closed her journal. But I am off for the next 3 days. I was thinking we could actually have a real date, not coffee between shifts. I would like that. What did you have in mind? Dinner, somewhere that is not a hospital cafeteria or a bakery. Maybe a place where we can talk for more than 20 minutes without being interrupted. Dash reached across the table and took her hand. I can arrange that. They talked for an hour about medicine and business and family and life. Vivian told him about losing her father to cancer 5 years ago, and Dash told her about Juliet. They shared their grief, not trying to fix it, just sitting with it together. You know what I like about you, Vivian said as they were leaving. What? You actually listen. Most people just wait for their turn to talk. But you pay attention. You care about the answers. Is that unusual? In my experience, tragically, yes. She squeezed his hand. You are a good man, Dash. Whatever that ex-fiancé of yours said, she was wrong. The words hit harder than he expected. He had spent 6 months wondering if Serafina had been right about some things. If he was too sentimental, too idealistic, too willing to see the best in people. But Vivian did not seem to think those were weaknesses. Can I ask you something? Dash said as they stood on the sidewalk outside the bakery. Anything. Would you have dinner with me next week? Somewhere nice? Somewhere we can talk without the smell of pastries distracting us? Vivian smiled. I thought you would never ask. Dashiell Thornwell stood in a hospital waiting room pacing like a caged animal. Monty sat in a plastic chair reading a magazine with impressive calm. You need to sit down, Monty said. Wearing a hole in the floor will not make the process go faster. I cannot sit. I am too nervous. You face down a ballroom full of New York society while exposing your fiancé as a fraud, but this makes you nervous. That was different. I was in control. I have no control over this. The door opened and a nurse appeared. Mr. Thornwell, your wife is asking for you. Dash practically ran down the hallway. The nurse led him to a private room where Vivian sat propped up in bed looking exhausted and beautiful and absolutely radiant. In her arms were 2 tiny bundles. Twins. Girls. Dash, Vivian said softly. Meet your daughters. Dash approached the bed like he was walking on holy ground. He looked down at the 2 tiny faces, red and wrinkled and perfect. They are beautiful, he whispered. They are loud and demanding, and they are going to rule your life. Vivian smiled. We need to name them. They had discussed this, had lists and debates and preferences. But now looking at his daughters, Dash knew exactly what their names should be. Emily, he said, touching the baby on the left. After my sister. And Sophia, Vivian said, touching the baby on the right. After my grandmother. Emily and Sophia Thornwell. Dash felt tears on his face and did not bother to hide them. Perfect. Vivian handed him one of the babies. Emily and Dash cradled her against his chest with the terrified care of someone holding a priceless, fragile treasure. I have no idea what I am doing, he admitted. None of us do. We just figure it out as we go. Vivian leaned her head against his shoulder. But we will figure it out together. That is what partners do. Partners, the word Dash had longed to hear. Not from Serafina, who had seen him as a resource to exploit, but from Vivian, who saw him as an equal, a collaborator, a teammate in building a life. I love you, Dash said. I do not say it enough, but I love you. I know, I love you too, even though you turned our wedding into a small, intimate affair with only 50 people because you were traumatized by the last engagement party. It was not trauma, it was wisdom learned through experience. Whatever you need to tell yourself. Vivian kissed his cheek. But seriously, Dash, you are going to be a great father. You see people. You care. You fight for what is right. Those are the things that matter. Over the next few days, Dash learned the rhythm of new parenthood. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, the strange magic of tiny fingers wrapping around his own. He and Vivian took turns walking the babies. When they cried, fell asleep in chairs while holding them, marveled at every sound and movement. Catalina visited, bringing pan dulce and tears of joy. Sebastian came with a basket of fancy French pastries that were entirely inappropriate for newborns, but delicious for exhausted parents. Carlos brought flowers and a handmade quilt his wife had sewn. The staff from the training center sent a massive arrangement with a card signed by 40 students. Monty brought practical gifts like diapers and baby monitors because he was Monty. And on the 3rd day, a letter arrived, hand-delivered to the hospital, from Serafina Blackwell. Dash almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. Dear Dashiell, I am writing from the county work release facility where I will be for the next 6 months. I spent a year in prison and I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand how I became the person I was. You were right about everything. I used people. I was cruel. I weaponized your grief and your love because I thought those things were weaknesses to exploit. Prison gave me time to think. Therapy gave me tools to understand. I learned that I was raised to see people as assets or liabilities, to value wealth over character, to measure worth in dollars instead of dignity. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know, you changed my life. Not by destroying me, I destroyed myself, but by showing me that there is a different way to live, a way that values people instead of using them. I saw the news about the training center, about your marriage, about your daughters. You built something good from the wreckage of what I destroyed. That is more than I ever could have done. I am working as a counselor now, helping women in the facility understand the patterns that brought them here. It is not much, but it is honest work. The first honest work I have ever done. I do not ask for your forgiveness or your friendship. I just wanted you to know that the man who stood in that ballroom and exposed me also saved me. You gave me a chance to become someone better. Thank you. Serafina Dash read the letter twice, then handed it to Vivian. What do you think? She asked after reading. I think people can change. I think she is trying. I think that is all anyone can do. Will you write back? No, she does not need my validation. She needs to do this for herself. Dash folded the letter and put it in his bag, but I am glad she is trying, for her sake. That night, alone with Emily while Vivian slept and Sophia was in the nursery, Dash found himself thinking about the journey that had brought him here. From the penthouse where he had stood holding a ring and drowning in doubt to Newport, where he had learned what it meant to be invisible, to the ballroom where he had exposed cruelty, to this hospital room, where he held his daughter and felt more wealthy than he had ever felt in his life. You know what, Emily, he whispered to the sleeping baby. Your dad used to think wealth was measured in dollars, in buildings and stocks and bank accounts. But I learned something important. Real wealth is being seen for who you really are and being loved anyway. Emily made a soft sound in her sleep. Your mom sees me, not the CEO, not the billionaire, just Dash. And that is worth more than all the diamonds in the world. He kissed her forehead gently. You and Sophia are going to grow up knowing that people matter more than profit, that kindness matters more than status, that the person who cleans your house deserves the same respect as the person who runs a company. Upe Dash adjusted her blanket. And if you ever forget that, I will take you to Catalina's bakery and make you work behind the counter for a week, so you remember what it feels like to serve. He spent the rest of the night watching Emily sleep, marveling at the tiny miracle in his arms, grateful for the path that had led him here. The masquerade was over. The servant had returned to being a billionaire. But Dashiell Thornwell was not the same man who had left Manhattan with a fake name and a desperate need for answers. He was someone better. Someone who had seen the world from the bottom up and refused to forget it. Someone who understood that the greatest power was not in what you owned, but in how you treated the people who could do nothing for you. That was the legacy he would leave. Not in buildings or bank accounts, but in the countless small moments of dignity, restored invisibility, reversed, and humanity recognized. And as he drifted towards sleep in that hospital chair holding his daughter, Dash felt something he had not felt in a long time. Complete peace, not the absence of pain, not the forgetting of betrayal, but the deep abiding peace that came from knowing he had done the right thing, that he had used his privilege responsibly, that he had seen the invisible and refused to look away. He had found himself in the process, and that was worth everything.